before they're actually occur. The only case where you would pay expenses is when you have a contract that requires a deposit. But normally, governments don't pay upfront for that. You get it done, you pay progress, bill you, and you pay it as it goes along. Okay? If there's no questions with that, we'll go on to the next one. The other one is, we had a problem this year where somebody had contracted with you for the convention space 2 years ago. We didn't refund their deposit. They obviously complained at some point and said, oh, I didn't get my deposit, can we use that to cover this? I don't know exactly who it is. Somebody went back, adjusted in 2017, and that caused fund balance problems for the last 2 years. So we had to go back and fix 217 to bring it back to where it was, and then do the thing in the current year. And what I'm recommending is you put in a password into QuickBooks so it's not easy to go back in the past to change things. It's a real problem with that. QuickBooks, you can go in anytime and change anything in any year, and oftentimes you can make date error mistakes and create big problems for yourself. So it's a good idea to go ahead and put that password in there so after the audit's done, you can't go back in the past years. What should have happened is they should have gotten approval, showed it to Kyle and said, oh, we made a mistake 2 years ago, we need approval to bring that $278 forward to the current year and give them their money back against the services we're providing this year. And it's just a matter of setting up that approval process and not going back into the past. It happens a lot with void checks and things like that, so make sure you don't void checks in the past, you void them in the current year, or you have the same problem. Now, the other comments are standard comments that you have a much more difficult time taking care of because of the smallness of your organization. One of the things I talk to you about every year is budget augmentations. When it comes to your room revenue, you collect it, and then you pay a portion of it out to the other organizations. You do your budget up front, but as revenue goes up, you don't readjust it. You should look at it at the end of every year and actually make a budget augmentation, write a letter to the board and say, it looks like this is how much it's going to be. And so that you're calculating, making sure you understand how the calculations are done and that you agree with what it is. Then the auditor can come in and audit much easier, knowing that you've done it instead of.
When's the deadline to do a budget augmentation? When?
June 30th.
Okay.
But you should try to, that's something, at the end of each year, you should look at it and see if you need to make any budget augmentations, and so you should do things like this.
So is that something our CPA is supposed to do?
I would hope he can, yes. He doesn't have a lot of government experience, but it's something that he can propose. It's something that Kyle should learn to look for and see, oh, yeah, do we need to do something? Do we have more revenue? Do we have something we want to spend it for? Do we need to do an augmentation? And since you're going to be paying these entities, the railroad, the city, all of that, it'd be a good idea to do it. Normally, a government, an organization does their own financial statements, and the auditor comes in and audits the financial statements. It's the best practices if you do it, and then somebody comes in like me, looks at them and says, yeah, that's nice, that's good. It is okay for me to do them. It's not as best practice. I suggest you continue to learn how to do it so that you're more understanding of what is in the financial statements, how they're done, so that you can take more responsibility for them. Now, you have a CPA on staff, that helps this time. But it's still, you need to bring your own internal knowledge up.
Right.
Segregation of duties, I talk to the board about it all the time. You have such a small organization, it's important that the board stay really involved in reviewing bills, reviewing all of the expenditures. Whenever there's a new vendor, you ask why, who it is, things of that nature, something that you've never seen, because you're an integral part of the accounting of the internal control system. You only have 3 people in general. Oftentimes, one person can be on vacation, and then the whole segregation that we've tried to do goes up in flames. So it's important that the board members review it, take it upon themselves, don't just sign checks that are presented, especially if they're presented without backup. Never sign a check that doesn't have backup, and never sign a check that you don't understand why you're paying it. And always ask questions, and make sure you know what you're doing. Over the years, we have reduced the amount of auditor adjustments that's made. There's still a couple that I make. It's a good idea to understand what they are and make sure that you can improve and get to the point that you don't need auditors to make your adjustments for you. But other than that, but again, you're a small organization, it's gonna happen. Okay. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, maybe I can go over and say, you had a good year, revenue was up about 9.3% for most of your organizations, I mean, your hotels in general. The only thing that happened is, though, you ended up giving more of it to the city, so that you ended up about even with where you were at.
Okay.
So, you didn't net any more revenue for the board, but revenue's up. The hotels are generating more revenue this year, and that's always good. Since I've been here in about 2007, doing it, revenue has generally increased every year. There are a few years it's gone down, but it's gone up quite substantially over the years. And that's good to see. That means more people are coming here for visitation. There's more construction going on, all of those things, which is very good for the promotion of the county. It has done very well. Now, the big thing I wanted to talk to you about, this is my last year of auditing for anyone. You're my last audit client. I'll still be doing other forms of accounting, but I wanted to thank you for all the years. I think it's been 12 or 13 years I've been auditing the board, and it's always been a pleasure to work with you folks, and I appreciate it. With that, if there's any questions I can answer or do anything.
Well, Robert, thank you.
Well, actually, go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to say thank you so much for such a good audit every time and solid recommendations. And I don't know if you see this, that every month we go through these bills before anything is signed, and any questions, there's a pile for Kyle before it's signed.
Excellent.
So they're all reviewed, every single detail of these. So because of your recommendation to be much more involved as board members. So thank you for making great recommendations.
You're welcome.
I second that. Thanks so much, Mr. Moore, for always working with us and doing a great job.
All right, and I will send you the auditors that I know that come to town, so you can contact them.
That was gonna be my thing, as I, in the 2 audits that I've gone through with you, last year was kind of like just figuring it out. This year I learned so much from you, and I appreciate it. And I wish we could continue to work together, because I feel like it would get me up to speed for where I need to be with my knowledge in it all. But any recommendation of a person to work with in the future that you think would mesh with, just the culture of our office and stuff like that, we would take any recommendation that you had.
Well, I'll send you the names of the people that I know come to town, and then you can contact them and make decisions.
Right.
Remember, you have to do it before March 31st.
Okay.
You have to inform the state who your auditor is. I'm more than willing to do whatever's necessary to make the transition as easy as possible, or anything that I can do for you. Whatever I happen to do. The important thing is you must accept this audit before it becomes a public document, and then you must send copies to the state and to the county so that they become public records. After you've approved it, then you can start handing copies out to the public.
Okay.
So, and if you need more copies, I can generate more copies.
All right.
With that, Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion?
Yes, we don't have any more questions, and we'll approve this.
I move that we approve the audit conducted by Robert Moore CPA and thank him for his services.
Seconded.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks like we're unanimous on that. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
And let's move on to approval of minutes of November 26, 2019. Anybody have anything they want to change?
John, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, we'll take that
I'd like
one.
to second that, I'd like to second that motion.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, looks like we're all unanimous on Since number 2, I'll get number 3, review the financial reports.
All right, so if you go through, grab your financial packet, let's go ahead and start with the tax report for November 2019. All right, and so this goes ahead and breaks down each one of those properties and what their tax collected was. And so for our total hotel motel collected is $126,227 $1,000 and 15 cents, but that does include almost $10,000 check that was returned last month after it was already reported. And so it goes into this. So if you were to take and minus that from the total amount, that's how much room tax we actually collected. So from the hotels, motels. From the RV parks and campgrounds, it was pretty low, only about $3,000, but that equated to a payout of $17,600 to the railroad. City of Ely got $20,905, and then the total, which is actually the golf course and the pool combined, was $1,379. So that was accounting for the county increase. So that gave about $76,000 to our tour and rec budget this last month. So what that equates to, if you look at the comparison, and I'm looking at the actual comparisons here now. For November compared to last year, it was down about 2.4%. So showing a little bit less than where we were at from this time last year, but October and November are traditionally our super lean months. You know, you look at the calendar for conventions in November, and it's the lowest of the year, you know, but December is the most packed, you know. So compared to looking at the trend from last year and even some of the past years, we see a noticeable dip in October and November in room tax collected, and then it starts going back up again in December. So, so that would be the comparison of that one. And then if you've got the 8-month or the 8% comparison. Again, we're still putting this in here, but I think this is not anything to even go over now because room tax is so remarkably different. The big thing is going to the budget. And so this would be the year-to-date, and to remind you, this is reporting, even though it's December, it's reporting for money that's been collected up through November. And so we're not quite at 50% of the fiscal year. But if you look at room tax collected from the city, we're at about 55% of what was budgeted. If you're looking at room tax that was budgeted for the county, we're almost at 71% of collected for the year. And that was because when we budgeted the counties, we didn't have the increase in there yet. So this would be great practice for that augmentation that Robert was talking about. Center events through November was at about 33%, but again, my staff was here almost every single day in December, so I expect to see that go up. If you go down expenses, nothing out of the ordinary. The few expenses that were over 100% have been like that for the last couple reports because those are paid off in the beginning of the year. And so you shouldn't see any more dues and subscriptions or internet connection. So last month, because of that $150 augmentation with the parking lot moving over into the expenses, we showed an operating deficit. But this month we're showing an operational surplus of $11,000. So again, if you really wanted to get a good picture of where we are at financially, add $150,000 to that. And that is truly, without that augmentation, how much of an operational surplus we would have year to date. So again, not being quite at 50% of the year, all of our income is looking good and our expenses are below budget. So any questions about the financial report, numbers, budgets, anything like that?
Kyle?
Yes,
Did I
Mary?
understand you correctly? You said there was a $10,000 return check on the room tax?
There was. One of our properties was switching accounts, so there was a timing issue. A check got returned, but they went ahead and resubmitted that.
Thank you.
Yep, totally.
Thank you very much.
And so that's all for my financial report.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the financial report. I guess it's discussion only, so we don't need to do that. So.
Moving on.
All right, is there a second?
Oh,
No, we don't need to vote on it, Mr. Chairman, that was just a
No.
mistake.
Okay, perfect.
No.
That's just